Picture a guy standing in a dealership service bay staring at an estimate sheet. His 2009 Silverado has 80,000 miles on it. That's nothing for a truck. That's barely broken in. And the number at the bottom of that page says $6,000. $6,000 for a truck with 80,000 miles that he bought to last him 20 years. The service advisor is doing that thing they do. The half-apologetic shrug, the hands in pockets lean, the "yeah, it's an expensive repair, but that's just how it is" voice. The problem is lifter failure. The AFM system ate the engine alive from the inside. And the truck is 3 years out of warranty. He owns every penny of it. The mechanic who did the diagnosis pulls him aside. This is a real conversation that happens in real shops. The mechanic looks at him and says, "Quiet as you please. If you had bought a 2005, this wouldn't have happened to you." And the guy just stares at him. Because nobody told him that. Not the salesman, not the finance guy, not the sticker on the window. Nobody mentioned that there was a year, a specific cutoff year, that changes everything about a Silverado's long-term reliability. That year is 2007. Everything before it is one kind of truck. Everything after it is something else entirely. And the difference between those two things is a system called active fuel management, a piece of GM engineering that has cost American truck owners hundreds of millions of dollars in repairs. Maybe more. The industry doesn't add those numbers up for you. They'd rather you didn't think about it too hard. Most people buying a used Silverado today have no idea this cutoff exists. They look at mileage. They look at the exterior. They might pull a Carfax. And they walk right past the one piece of information that will determine whether that truck runs for 300,000 miles or becomes a four-wheeled money pit before it hits 120,000. This video is going to give you that information. Every bit of it. And by the time we're done, you'll know exactly what years to look for and exactly what to avoid. My name is Wade Tucker. I've spent the better part of my adult life under the hoods of pickup trucks, turning wrenches, doing diagnostics, buying and selling, and watching what happens to trucks over time. I'm not a dealership. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm the guy the dealership hopes you don't talk to before you sign on the dotted line. If this channel is giving you the real information that mechanics talk about in private, hit that subscribe button right now. There's a lot more where this comes from, and every video I put out could save you thousands of dollars. Now let's talk about what active fuel management actually is, because a lot of people have heard the name, but don't really understand the mechanism. And understanding the mechanism is how you understand why it fails. GM introduced active fuel management on its V8 engines beginning with the 2007 model year. The system goes by AFM. The basic idea is this. When you're cruising at highway speeds and you don't need full power, the engine automatically shuts off 4 of its 8 cylinders. The truck is running on 4 cylinders instead of 8. Less fuel being burned. Better fuel economy numbers. And those fuel economy numbers matter enormously to an automaker because the federal government sets corporate average fuel economy standards, CAFE standards, and the fines for not meeting them are steep. GM needed better fuel economy ratings to stay competitive and avoid penalties. AFM was their answer. On paper, it sounds clever. In the real world, it has been an engineering disaster for hundreds of thousands of truck owners. Here's what happens inside the engine when AFM kicks in. The system uses special lifters, hydraulic roller lifters, that can collapse on command. When the engine control module decides to drop to 4 cylinders, it cuts fuel and spark to 4 of the 8 cylinders, and it collapses those lifters so the valves stop opening and closing. The cylinder goes dormant. When you need power again, the lifters reinflate and the cylinders fire back up. This is happening constantly during normal driving. Every time you're on the highway, that system is cycling on and off, hundreds of times per trip. The problem is that those collapsible lifters are not as durable as the solid lifters in a traditional engine. They rely on oil pressure to expand and collapse. And over time, especially when the oil isn't perfectly clean, when the engine has some wear, when temperatures cycle, those lifters begin to fail. They collapse and they don't come back up, or they come up partially. When a lifter fails, the camshaft that rides against it can be damaged. When the camshaft is damaged, you're looking at a full engine teardown. We're talking about pulling the intake manifold, pulling the valley cover, inspecting every lifter, replacing the damaged ones, inspecting the cam, possibly replacing the cam. In a shop charging $120 an hour, that's a $5,000 to $8,000 job, easily. Some owners have paid more. What makes this especially painful is the mileage at which AFM failures tend to occur. You're not talking about a truck that's got 200,000 hard miles on it. You're talking about trucks at 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 miles. Trucks that should still have a full working life ahead of them. Trucks that owners bought expecting to drive for another decade. The AFM system accelerates the wear pattern in a way that would not have happened in a pre-2007 engine. And that's not speculation. That's the documented repair history of tens of thousands of GM trucks. It's in the forums. It's in the shop records. It's in the class action lawsuits. The data is there if you look for it. There's also an oil consumption issue that goes hand in hand with AFM failures. Owners started noticing that their AFM-equipped 5.3-liter engines were burning oil between changes, a quart every 1,000 miles in some cases. That's not normal for a modern engine. GM issued technical service bulletins about it. A TSB is essentially GM telling mechanics, here's the problem and here's how to address it without issuing a formal recall. They changed the oil life monitor algorithm in some cases. They updated piston rings in later production. But for hundreds of thousands of owners who bought trucks in that early AFM window, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, they were on their own with the repair bills. Now let's talk about the trucks that don't have any of this. The trucks that the mechanics whisper about when they want to buy a reliable pickup for themselves or their family. The pre-AFM list. The 2004, 2005, and 2006 Silverado with the 5.3-liter V8. These are the trucks. This is the sweet spot. This is the version of the Silverado that serious truck people seek out specifically because they know what comes after. The 5.3-liter in these trucks is based on GM's LS engine architecture. The LS series is one of the most celebrated pushrod V8 platforms ever built. It's reliable, it's tunable, it's durable in ways that automotive engineers still marvel at. And in its naturally aspirated no AFM form inside a 2004 to 2006 Silverado, it is an engine that can genuinely hit 250,000 to 300,000 miles with nothing more than regular oil changes, a timing chain at the right interval, and basic maintenance. What makes the LS-based 5.3-liter so durable in these years? First, simplicity. This engine does not have collapsible lifters. It has solid hydraulic roller lifters, the same type that has been proven over decades of hard use. The valve train is not asked to do anything exotic. It opens the valves, it closes the valves. It does it the same way every single time. There's no electronic command telling 4 cylinders to go dormant and then wake back up thousands of times a day. The engine runs all 8 cylinders all the time, and that consistency is what allows it to rack up extraordinary mileage without issues. Second, the oil system in these engines is conservative and robust. They have good oil flow, decent sump capacity, and when you keep clean oil in them, they reward you with long life. Mechanics who work on both pre-AFM and post-AFM 5.3-liter engines will tell you flatly, the older engines are easier to work on, more forgiving of slightly extended oil changes, and far less likely to surprise you with a catastrophic internal failure at a modest mileage. Third, and this is the piece that gets overlooked, these engines have proven their reliability in the real world over a long period of time. We're not talking about theoretical projections. We're talking about actual trucks driven by actual people that have been documented crossing the 300,000-mile mark with their original engines still running strong. That kind of proof of concept doesn't come from a test bench. It comes from 20 years of observation. The 2004 to 2006 Silverado 5.3-liter has that proof. It has earned its reputation the hard way. Serious truck buyers, the ones who do their homework before they spend money, keep what they call a pre-AFM list. It's exactly what it sounds like. A list of the specific year and engine combinations that predate the AFM system. For the Silverado with the 5.3-liter V8, that list is 2004, 2005, 2006. 3 model years. When those buyers go shopping for a used truck, they filter by those years first. They don't care if a 2011 Silverado looks nicer or has lower miles on paper. They know that the engine architecture underneath the hood of that 2011 carries a risk that the 2005 does not, and they shop accordingly. Now let's talk about what GM knew and when they knew it, because this is the part of the story that the dealership service department definitely does not want to discuss with you. The AFM system launched with the 2007 model year trucks. Within a relatively short time after those trucks started accumulating miles, complaints began to surface. Mechanics were seeing lifter failures at mileages that should not have been problematic. Oil consumption reports started hitting GM's internal database. They tracked this stuff through warranty claims and dealer reports. Technical service bulletins started going out to dealers by the early 2010s, acknowledging that AFM-related oil consumption was a documented issue. GM was aware. This was not a mystery to them. The class action lawsuits began to pile up. GM eventually settled litigation related to AFM oil consumption defects in vehicles sold from 2010 through 2014. The settlement covered diagnostics and, in some cases, partial reimbursement for repairs. It did not cover every owner. It did not cover every model year. And it certainly did not result in GM actually fixing the AFM system or making it opt out for buyers. They kept selling trucks with AFM. They kept collecting money for trucks that they knew carried a documented internal failure risk, and they let the owners figure out the rest on their own when the warranty expired. What's particularly telling is the timeline of their response versus the timeline of their knowledge. The complaints were there early. The TSBs followed. The class actions followed after that. And through all of it, GM's marketing was running full-page ads about the durability and toughness of the Silverado. There's a saying in the industry, what the marketing department says and what the engineering department knows are sometimes two very different things. The AFM era is a textbook example of that gap. GM has since moved away from pure AFM to a more sophisticated cylinder deactivation system called Dynamic Fuel Management, DFM, which can deactivate different combinations of cylinders depending on load. Whether this system will prove more reliable over time remains to be seen. The trucks are still too new to know. But for the Silverado buyer who wants certainty, the pre-AFM trucks offer something that no post-2007 truck can: a proven track record of long-term reliability without the cylinder deactivation gamble. So let's say you've decided you want a pre-AFM Silverado. You want a 2004, 2005, or 2006 with the 5.3-liter V8. How do you actually find one in good shape, and how do you protect yourself? First, know where to look. Private sales are almost always preferable to dealer lots for a truck in this age range. A dealer buying a 2005 Silverado at auction and putting it on the lot is going to clean it up, put new tires on it, and price it at retail. You're paying for the shine. Private sales let you talk to the actual owner, the person who drove it, maintained it, and knows its quirks. That conversation is worth a lot. Ask them for maintenance records. Ask when the oil was last changed. Ask if it's ever had any engine work. If they can produce receipts, that's a green flag. If they get evasive about maintenance history, walk away. Second, know how to confirm you're actually looking at a pre-AFM engine. On the driver's side door jamb, there's a sticker that includes the RPO codes, regular production order codes. These are GM's internal codes for what equipment was installed in that specific truck. You're looking for the engine code. A 5.3-liter without AFM will have a code that corresponds to the LC9 or LM7 or LY5, depending on year and variant. If you Google the specific RPO code you find on the door jamb sticker, you can confirm exactly which engine is in the truck and whether it has cylinder deactivation or not. Don't skip this step. It takes 2 minutes and it tells you everything. Third, before you buy any used truck, regardless of year, get a pre-purchase inspection done by an independent mechanic. Not a dealer, not the seller's guy. Your mechanic. Have them put it on a lift and look at the frame for rust, especially if the truck spent time in the rust belt. A pre-AFM Silverado with a solid frame and a clean engine is gold. A pre-AFM Silverado with a rotted-out frame is a parts truck. Know what you're buying. A pre-purchase inspection typically runs $100 to $150. That's the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy before a used truck purchase. Fourth, on a used truck this age, Check the oil filler cap and the underside of the oil cap. If there's a milky brown or grayish sludge buildup, that's a sign of coolant mixing with oil, potentially a head gasket issue or worse. Pull the dipstick and look at the oil color. Dark black is fine if they're due for a change. Milky or frothy is bad. Smell the coolant reservoir. If it smells like exhaust or oil, that's another red flag. These are simple checks that take 5 minutes in a driveway and can save you from buying someone else's problem. Now let's talk about the other side of this equation. What if you already own a post-2007 Silverado with AFM? Maybe you didn't know about any of this when you bought it. Maybe you bought it new. Maybe you got a great deal on a 2011 with low miles, and now you're reading this and wondering what your options are. The good news is that you're not necessarily stuck waiting for the engine to fail. The AFM Delete Kit is exactly what it sounds like. It's a kit that removes the active fuel management system from your engine and replaces the collapsible AFM lifters with standard solid lifters. The most well-known option on the market is the Range AFM Disabler, a plug-and-play device that tells the engine control module not to activate AFM without actually deleting the hardware. It plugs into the OBD2 port under the dash and it tricks the system into keeping all 8 cylinders firing all the time. It costs roughly $80 to $100 and it takes about 10 minutes to install. If you sell the truck, you unplug it and it's gone. No traces, no modifications to the engine. The more comprehensive approach is a full hardware delete kit. This involves replacing the AFM lifters with standard lifters, installing a new valley cover without the AFM solenoids, and getting a custom tune to disable the AFM system in the ECM. This is a real engine job. You're getting into the top end of the engine, pulling the intake, getting into the valve train. Done by a competent mechanic, it runs somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 depending on labor rates in your area. But here's the thing, if you're going to own that truck for another 100,000 miles, it's the right call. You're replacing the weak point before it fails rather than paying $5,000 to fix it after the fact. Wade's honest take on the delete option. If you have an AFM truck that's already showing symptoms, oil consumption above a quart per 1,000 miles, any lifter tick on startup, any rough running at light throttle, don't mess around with a plug-in disabler. Get the full hardware delete done. The collapsible lifters in that engine are already compromised. Disabling the system at the ECM level keeps them from cycling, which reduces wear, but the hardware itself may already be on the clock. If you catch it early, the full delete can prevent the catastrophic failure. If you wait until a lifter fully collapses and takes the cam with it, you're back to that $6,000 conversation in the service bay. If your AFM truck is running perfectly fine and you just want to be proactive, the Range Disabler is a reasonable first step. Plug it in, keep fresh oil in the engine, check your oil level between changes, and monitor for any consumption. If it stays clean and tight, you may never have a problem. Some owners go 200,000 miles on AFM engines with no failures. It happens. But the ones who don't are the ones showing up in forums and Facebook groups looking for advice after the bill comes in. And those stories are a lot more common than GM would like to admit. Here's the bottom line, and I want to be straight with you about this. The Silverado is a good truck. The 5.3 liter in all its forms is a fundamentally solid engine platform. But the AFM era introduced a systemic weakness that has cost real people real money, and the dealerships profited from that situation in 2 ways. First, by selling you the truck, and then by charging you to fix the problem that came with it. That's the game. The way you opt out of that game is with information. The Pre-AFM list, 2004, 2005, 2006 with the 5.3 liter, exists because mechanics and long-term truck owners figured out what the dealers weren't telling them. They shared that information with each other. They paid it forward. That's what this channel is about. That information doesn't cost you anything. The ignorance, though, that'll run you $6,000 standing in a service bay staring at an estimate sheet. What year is your Silverado? Drop it in the comments right now. Whether you've got a pre-AFM truck you're proud of, a post-2007 truck you're watching carefully, or you're in the market trying to figure out what to buy, put it down below. Tell me what you're driving and what you've experienced. I read every comment. This community is built on exactly that kind of real-world knowledge going back and forth. and your experience might be the thing that saves somebody else from a very expensive mistake. If this video gave you information that you can actually use, that's what I'm here for. Subscribe if you haven't yet. There's a lot more of this kind of content coming. Real information about real trucks from someone who's been turning wrenches long enough to know where the bodies are buried. The dealers aren't going to tell you this stuff, but I will.